Ladies and gentlemen, Norwegian theatre director Henrik Ibsen had said, "A picture speaks 1,000 words." Not just words, the picture on your screen is history in its entire self. The 45th President of the United States just survived an assassination attempt. A fist bump seconds after a bullet passes your ear isn't something that you see every day. And that is why this photograph by Ivan Bucci has now gone down as the defining moment in recent American political history. Donald Trump's fierce fighter demeanor has many recollecting Ronald Reagan's famous wit after he survived an assassination attempt in 1981. 6 years later, a balloon popped while he was giving a speech, and here's what he had said on it.
By its very existence and character, Berlin remains the most compelling argument for an open world. We're reminded of the many traditions of openness and democracy that have marked the history of this city. Missed me. By its very existence and character, Berlin remains the most compelling argument. By its very...
All right, so that was Ronald Reagan, of course. But jokes apart, in a short while from now at the ongoing Republican National Convention, Donald Trump will be officially named as the GOP candidate. But even as this shocking assassination attempt is being probed, it has opened up a Pandora's box on how the Secret Service operates. It has also thrown up questions on how the Republicans and the Democrats will now move forward with their campaigning strategies. The fact that the shooting happened in Pennsylvania, which President Biden had won back in 2020, has given ammo to the Republicans to come out in large numbers and vote for Trump this year. Many even say that now the path is clear for Donald Trump's victory. On the other hand, the Democrats are calling for unity and calm, which is a sharp contrast, by the way, to how Biden had been calling Donald Trump a threat to democracy earlier.
I said the most urgent question of our time is whether democracy is still the sacred cause of America. That is the question the American people must answer this year. And you, the press, play a critical role in making sure the American people have the information they need to make an informed decision. The defeated former president has made no secret of his attack on our democracy. He said he wants to be a dictator on day one, and so much more. He tells supporters he is their revenge and retribution. When in God's name have you ever heard of another president say something like that? And he promised a bloodbath when he loses again. We have to take this seriously. My fellow Americans, I want to speak to you tonight about the need for us to lower the temperature in our politics. And to remember, while we may disagree, we are not enemies. We're neighbors, we're friends, co-workers, citizens, and most importantly, we're our fellow Americans. We must stand together. Yesterday's shooting at Donald Trump's rally in Pennsylvania calls on all of us to take a step back, take stock of where we are, how we go forward from here. Thankfully, former Trump is not seriously injured. I spoke with him last night. I'm grateful. He's doing well, and Jill and I keep him and his family in our prayers. We also extend our deepest condolences to the family of the victims who was killed. Corey was a husband, a father, a volunteer firefighter, a hero, sheltering his family from those bullets. Tonight, I want to speak to what we do know. A former president was shot, an American citizen killed, while simply exercising his freedom to support the candidate of his choosing. We cannot, we must not go down this road in America. We've traveled it before throughout our history.
Now, the accused, Thomas Matthew Crooks, the 20-year-old, got his father's AR-15 semi-automatic rifle fired upon Trump and was finally killed. Yet the sad part is that neither Republicans nor Democrats have even mentioned how the gun culture risks lives in America every day. Several questions that remain unanswered, many angles being probed, and all eyes now on the US presidential election slated for November this year. Let's try and get an understanding of what exactly is happening in the United States and how this really moves forward now. On the broadcast, I'm joined by Spencer Critchley. He's a political analyst and author. I'm also joined by Vibhuti Jha, former Republican candidate, and Rohit Sharma, journalist based in Washington, D.C. Good evening. Namaskar to all of you. Rohit, let me come across to you first. It's just a few hours since that assassination attempt happened on Donald Trump. Now you have the National Republican Convention happening. Get us the latest of what exactly is the sentiment right now in the United States. What's happening?
The two things going on. First is, the conversation has shifted. Everybody was asking Joe Biden to step aside. And that was the political conversation. I think at the start of the RNC, because of this attack on Saturday, things have changed now. I think people are looking at Donald Trump. Some people are saying the fact that this is Donald Trump's election to lose now. Donald Trump's going to win this election. People are closely watching RNC. We've been told that the speeches have been changed, the drafts have been changed in the light of the attack on Saturday. Donald Trump hinted at that also, saying that his speech will be different than what he had planned for. And then there's a buzz around, who's going to be the next vice president under Donald Trump. So I think that's what's dominating the headlines, among the other things, which is Joe Biden trying to take action, trying to, make sure that America stands united and there are no more rioting in the U.S. So it's pretty charged up environment right now, Shreya. And as we, look forward in the next couple of days, we'll probably get a sense of what's headed next after the RNC.
Yes. Yes, absolutely. And all eyes, of course, are on how this campaign now moves forward for both the Republicans as well as the Democrats. Spencer, let me ask you, what do you have to say about people who are blaming the Democrats for this entire situation that the United States has witnessed in the last few hours? The fact that people are saying that it was Joe Biden who called Donald Trump a threat to democracy. He called him names. He personally attacked him. The fact that major national news channels in the country were painting a picture of Donald Trump that made him out to be the villain. And therefore, the kind of situation that you're seeing in the United States is largely due to the Democrats and the media nexus.
Unfortunately, this was predictable. One of the strengths of the Republican Party under Donald Trump in particular is this incredible discipline on settling on a narrative almost instantaneously and then having all voices speak as one. And we saw this with the decision within minutes, apparently, after the assassination attempt to blame this on the Democrats as supposedly the inciters of violence, which serves their interests well politically because they hope to make it very difficult for Democrats to engage in legitimate criticism of former President Trump. This is very difficult for people who aren't paying careful attention day by day, and they're counting on that. The record of the Trump presidency, the pre-presidency during his campaign and post-presidency, is one of continuous calls to violence. And as far as him being a threat to democracy, President Biden was quoting him accurately in the clip that you played earlier, the first of the two clips.
Can I say just the fact that after this assassination bid, I don't think the record of the Trump presidency matters at all in this year's election. Americans will not look at it. The world is not looking at it. The entire focus, of course, is on that assassination bid and how Donald Trump had that fist bump in the air.
Unfortunately, yes, they understand this very well.
Fortunately or unfortunately, whatever it...
People tend to be far more influenced by emotion than by facts and logic. And this is true of people of all sorts on the right and the left. It's a fact of human psychology. And symbolic communication, like the powerful symbol of that photo, easily overwhelms any list of facts, no matter how long and no matter how convincing. And the Republicans are counting on that. But the situation that voters are called on to reckon with is the record as it actually is, not just the symbolic impressions of the record. And Donald Trump has been calling for violence against opponents from the beginning, starting out during his first campaign of promising to pay the legal bills of people at rallies who assaulted protesters. During his presidency, he tried to call out the U.S. military against peaceful protesters in front of the White House and asked why those soldiers couldn't shoot the protesters, who, remember, were peaceful, perhaps in the legs if they weren't allowed to kill them. During the January 6th insurrection, Donald Trump sat for
Yet,
3
yet
hours
Spencer,
and
the
watched the
assassination
insurrection
attempt happened
on
on
television.
Donald Trump and not anybody else. Despite you
No, I'm
saying
just trying
whatever
to
Trump
set the
had been
record.
saying, yet the assassination bid was on
I'm,
him.
no, I'm trying to set the
Absolutely
record straight.
understandable. If those are facts, the fact is also that there was an assassination. That is also a fact, that Donald Trump
Absolutely, and it
did
was
survive that
horrible.
assassination attempt. But let me take this across. Yeah, let me take this across to Vibhuti Jha. Vibhuti Jha, for Republicans, this of course changes the entire stance that they had been taking. It is now, clear that Donald Trump has emerged as the hero for the Republican Party. How does it make things different now in terms of how the Republicans will approach electioneering?
That's a very good question. How would Republican approach it? Now, it's very simple. As Mr. Trump said in a post-assassination bid, that I'm supposed to be dead. And he's not. He's alive. And he's alive to tell the story. This is, just think about it, that fraction of a second, a nanosecond in which he tilted his head and escaped the bullet, he survived. Had he been killed, you would have had another Warren Commission kind of a institution built to investigate, and we would never know the truth. Now, the people are afraid when the truth is coming out. The failure, as we have seen now, I mean, we can't establish anything with concrete evidence as such, but we know now very clearly that the shooter was crawling on the rooftop. People are pointing it out to them. How did he reach that sanctum, that prohibited space, a sanctioned space, or a space that was supposed to have been sanitized? There are all kinds of stories spinning out right now. But let's come back to the Republican agenda here. And I want to say this very clearly. You played a very nice video right in the beginning. Two faces of Joe Biden. At one time, you are calling your opponent a Hitler dictator and creating an absolute stunning fear-mongering about that guy, that he's a total monster, instigating people in the process. Playing emotion, what Spencer was telling was correct. Democratic Party is remarkably smart, and I always tip my hat to them. They're tactically far more superior in exploiting the emotion of people. Republican Party focuses on issues, and that's why they lose. I said this to my party as well, that you do not know how to emotionalize an issue. Democratic Party is rather smart, and I tip my hat to that, saying again, in this convention, what you would find is that Trump has survived. There will be many skeletons falling from many cupboards. Many cupboards will be happening there. And one thing is definitely true. This is what people have not talked about. We have two contrasting terms between 16 to 20 and 20 to 24 in play in comparison. Right? So this is what is important. People are saying all the accusation, the claptrap, the lawfare, the legal warfare, accusation of this collusion and that collusion is all falling apart. And the one of the things which has caught on the public, don't say much about it, that Robert Hur, who was a special counsel to investigate Biden's document case, opined that after his 1-hour interview that Biden was not fit. He's an old and out of sorts man to face an investigation. But President Trump is being charged in the legal document case on the same analysis. But importantly enough, Mr. Biden had those documents when he was vice president and senator, not as president. And these two cases are different. So you can see people are seeing through that somewhere along the line, the Democratic Party agenda is to trap him here, there, or anywhere, to disqualify him. And that is not going to happen because God's grace, he survived a death attempt.
And well, you have to give it to him, this interview that he's given to the New York Post, and he was asked about this iconic photo of his where he's fist pumping in the air after he was shot at. He's saying a lot of people say it's the most iconic photo they've ever seen. They're right, and I didn't die. Usually you have to die to have an iconic picture. So that's Donald Trump for you. But Rohit, let me come across to you. You've heard the, Republican perspective, the Democrat perspective. Which way is it really going? The fact of the matter is that, yes, before this assassination attempt happened, it was Joe Biden's age which was in focus. Now it's not there. But Democrats are being blamed for this assassination attempt. How does this really play out now in terms of the campaigning? You also have Joe Biden toning it down. He's calling for unity. He's calling for calm. He's calling for everybody to work together and lowering the political temperatures. How do you see this moving forward?
Well, look, one thing that the assassination attempt did was that it in fact, it united the Republican Party. There were segments within the Republican Party that were against Trump. We saw a bitter primary play out between Nikki Haley and Donald Trump. There were Nikki Haley supporters that Biden was going after, trying to convince them to vote for Joe Biden. I think what this assassination attempt has done, it's consolidated that. And this is a Trump GOP now. There's no more Republicans against Trump anymore. It's a consolidated Republican Party. As far as the Joe Biden is concerned and his campaign is concerned, look, they are in a fix. He is the president right now. I mean, they stopped airing some ads that they wanted to air during the RNC, calling Trump's record out, talking about Project 2025. They're grappling with trying to understand how do they contain this moment, because they don't want to add to this toxic environment. So I think for now, Team Biden has hit pause. There's some Democratic lawmakers who have resigned to the fact that Donald Trump is going to win the presidency. And it remains to be seen what the impact would be. But one thing is for sure, Shreya, I think I say this for everybody. People in America actually believe that this is the moment for Donald Trump. Spoken to a few people who believe that this divine intervention was meant for America to be saved for a second Trump presidency. And the only reason he's running is to save America. And a lot of people actually believe that. So from here now, I think Joe Biden faces tough choice. I think the murmurs will rise again about him stepping aside. But what remains to be seen is how does Donald Trump handle this moment? I just saw another statement from Donald Trump where he's gone back to his old rhetoric a little bit, but we'll have to wait and see what he does, because one of the other things that people are trying to control is this rhetoric that caused such an incident to take place, and they're expecting that there could be violence if such toxic environment continues.
Spencer, can I understand from you, of course, the Republicans will be speaking about this a lot more now till the very end, till you have the elections in November this year. But for the Democrats, there is, of course, very evidently a tone down in the heated election campaigning that was being done, in the attacks against Donald Trump. All of that has been toned down with President Joe Biden, leading that campaign. But for Democrats, how does this turn around? How can they turn this around for themselves just before November?
And again, I reject the framing that somehow Democrats were uniquely the ones promoting violence when the reverse is the case. Democrats have uniformly called on the use of elections and the rule of law, not on violence, whereas Donald Trump has made a cult of violence central to his candidacy. But this gets to a distinction that is not a distinction between political left and right in the United States. And this is something I write about and speak about frequently. This is a conflict between fundamentally different worldviews. And without judging which of those worldviews is the quote unquote correct one, it gives an indication of just how difficult it is to bridge a gap like that. The Democratic Party is operating within the worldview often described as the modern worldview that's descended from the Enlightenment, which is based on reason and the rule of law and liberal democracy. But there's always been a reaction against that worldview from people, for example, on religious grounds or on ethnic identity grounds and ethnic nationalist grounds. And we see that playing out in the United States right now, but we also see it playing out across the world, in Russia, in Eastern Europe, in the UK, in France, in Germany, in India, across the Islamic world, where people are choosing a worldview in which, for example, what happens is determined by God, whoever they think God is, whether it's the Christian God or it's Allah or somebody else's God. And so Donald Trump in this worldview was spared by God because God wants him to lead. Whereas in the worldview the Democratic Party is operating within, we live within a system of laws according to a constitution, And we don't require a belief in God. We don't require people not to believe in God, but we don't require that they do believe in any God. And under that system, we try to resolve conflicts according to the Constitution and the laws. And ultimately, this is what the conflict comes down to and why this divide can appear to be unbridgeable sometimes. Now, a hopeful sign is that when you conduct surveys of all Americans, as the Associated Press and the University of Chicago did just a couple of months ago, you find that there's 80 to 90+% agreement on the fundamental principles of democracy. For example, how do you feel about the importance of freedom or equality or the ability to vote? And you find that 80 to 90+% of Americans agree that these are very important principles and values, and they agree on fundamental values like honesty and kindness. But unfortunately, when provoked and when manipulated, people can be sorted into these warring tribes, often by extremely cynical people operating for their own interests. And unfortunately, the United States is wrestling with this problem now, but it's also happening in countries across the world, including many democracies, which I consider to be tragic.
What I had asked specifically, I don't think you've really answered that. How can the Democrats turn this around for themselves, as opposed to Republicans really encashing upon this entire incident till November? But let me go across to Vibhuti Jha. Vibhuti Jha, you know, apart from the election campaign, Vibhuti Jha, one of the foremost thoughts that came to my mind when I saw this was, why isn't anybody talking about ending gun culture? You have a 20-year-old young boy having his father's, rifle, using it, and nobody, not even the Republicans, are talking about how there should be an end to gun culture, that there should be stricter gun laws. Why aren't the Republicans talking about it?
That's a very, very valid question about guns, abortion. These are issues on which the Democratic Party excels and talks about this as if the guns are this guy. You have to understand we don't have that much time to go into the details of it, but suffice to say that the British won the independence because they had guns against the oppressive British regime in the US War of Independence. So goes the history here. The general who lost the war was sent to India as the Governor General, and he immediately took away the right of weapons in India. So the joke goes around that if India had the gun rights, maybe we would have won the independence faster than otherwise. But I would talk about here, as what Spencer was talking about, is the facile manner in which the whole problem of America is only because those 4 years of Donald Trump. As if there was no life or there was no democracy prior to that. And this is the fundamental question which I ask, is that why haven't we won our war on illegal immigration? Why there is no comprehensive immigration reform? Why haven't we won our war on illegal arms? Why haven't we won our war on drugs? These are all continuing to be in the place. So whether Republican or Democrat, are we trying to actually solve the problem? So when Trump comes in 2016 and begins to campaign that I want to end this, yes, he's not politically savvy. Like I had said during Obama's presidency, I had written an article in Indian newspapers that if this man achieves even 20% of what he promised as we can, this man will go down in the history as the greatest ever president. Likewise, I said if Trump had the sophistication of Clinton and Obama in his choice of words, he won't look that evil, that way he's painted out. But in essence, if you look at, he's telling the truth, and truth is unpleasant to face. So look at Biden's speech, which you quoted earlier on. And this is very vital for everybody to know that when he said, I will be dictator on day one, it was in an interview with Hannity, in which he said, I will be dictator only on day one. I had opined to his supporters, he need not even get into that, because people will pick up his statement and quote out of the way. He said only on day one. They said he will be dictator on day one. So look at the perspective in which these people run the argument. And that's what I think Democratic Party is on a weaker wicket.
Vibhuti Jha, I have paucity of time. I have to wrap it up here. But, everybody has their own versions of truth, their own perspectives on the entire situation. Hopefully, we will not see any more violent incidents in the US or anywhere else in the world. There is politics, people have their opinions, but it doesn't mean you shoot at each other and you kill each other over it. Thank you very much to all of you gentlemen, Spencer, Vibhutija and Rohit. Thank you very much to all of you for joining us tonight and sharing your perspective. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, with that, it's a wrap on Nation Tonight. News and updates will continue on Mirror Now, but thank you very much for joining us tonight. Bye-bye.